Hello, and welcome to a minisode of My Streaming Bubble. You know, the podcast where I talk about the streamable media that I love with the people I tolerate. I am your TV watching and talking host, Jen, and in today's mini bubble, I'm just going to go over a handful of titles that I have recently watched. I think I've got like two and a half, something like that. Well, you'll find out why it's a half. But before I get started on that, just a couple of quick announcements, updates. After this episode, I'm going to be taking a short break from recording and scheduling recordings just for maybe like a couple of weeks. The kids are going back to school, so I want to be able to enjoy that time of them not being in my house and just me being able to do whatever I want. Although that's really hard for me to do because like I've got one of those brains where it's like I can't just sit and do nothing during the day. Like that's not veg time. Weekends don't count because they're the fucking weekends. But it's like the other day I was going through clothes for the youngest for the school year, going through some of the old hand-me-downs from the oldest, and just to try to see what we need to get rid of, what needs to be replaced, and yada yada. And as I'm sitting there going through everything, my brain is just like, but you could be doing something so much more productive. Like, what? Bitch, shut the fuck up. Anyway, so mini tangent. But when I am back, I will for surely be back in October. And I have decided that for October, I'm going to try doing one of those like theme months that a lot of other folks do. So with October being spooky season and, you know, a lot of horror movies for everybody, I have decided that my October episodes are going to be covering found footage films, a few of my favorites. So because found footage is one of like my favorite like subgenres or whatever. There are a lot of bad ones out there, but there are a lot of good ones. And I've always said that I feel like I have to go through a lot of bad ones to find the good ones. So I will have a handful of those picked out and ready to go for you guys in October. So until then, like I said, this minisode just going to go over a handful of things. And then when the podcast comes back, whenever that happens to be, there's just going to be a slight shift in what is covered and how it's covered. When this podcast started, it was more show focused. You know, talking about the shows I love with the people I tolerate. You may have noticed in the intro, it's tweaked a little bit to the streamable media that I love with the people I tolerate. And that's because when I'm back, I'm going to focus more on covering movies with tolerables. Shows are always going to be on the table, but I want to push the movies a bit more just because for scheduling and time-wise and editing and all that kind of shit, it's just going to make my life a little easier. And I'm all about making my life a little easier. It's 2025 for fuck's sakes. Anything we can do to make our existence just a wee easier, we should fucking do it. So for me, that is reducing the number of shows that I cover on the podcast. When the podcast first started, it was very, like I said, show centered, and it was very much like season by season. So I was just kind of making shit up as I went along. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. And that was fine. And I'm generally okay with that. Still doing shows season by season. However, for just, again, scheduling and time-wise and being able to plan watching, rewatches, and trying to cover a series in a timely fashion, I will be moving to covering shows as a full series, not just by season. And even though that's still a time commitment, I feel like that might be a little, then I don't feel like I've got like a show, an unfinished series just kind of hanging out there. I've got a couple of them out there right now, I know, and trust me, that drives me a wee cuckoo bananas, but I just got to try and let it go because it is what it is. But I'm kind of hoping that by planning to rewatch or watch an entire series, even when they've got multiple seasons with more than 10 episodes, I feel like that still might be, while still a time commitment, might be a little easier for everyone to kind of plan and schedule. So that is the little changes coming up. Nothing big, nothing major, just teeny tiny tweaks. So yeah, that's it for like announcements and shit. Yeah, okay. All right, so moving on to the minisode. Like I said, I've got a couple of shows. I got a couple of titles to go over real quick. Real quick. I really need to fucking stop saying that because that is a fucking lie and a half. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first one that I'm going to talk about is going to be Andor Season 2, and then, of course, Rogue One. So this is kind of where that half comes into place, because with Andor Season 2, that was a show that my husband and I watched together. We watched, Season 1, and then Season 2 came out, and we were still watching Bones, and just could not start anything new until we finished that. So we started it and finished it and absolutely fucking loved it. So here we go with all the IMDb stuff and yada yadas. Let's see. For Andor, just the general synopsis on IMDb. In an era filled with danger, deception, and intrigue, Cassian Andor embarks on a path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. I didn't really have a synopsis for this one. I wasn't planning on covering it, so I don't really have like a whole lot of fucking notes on it. Classic me. But the series was created by Tony Gilroy and written and directed by many people. It stars Diego Luna, Denise Gough, Stellan Skarsgård, Big Papa Skarsgård, Adria Arjona, Genevieve O'Reilly, and many more. And it's available on Disney+. We do not have it at the library I work at on DVD. I don't even know if it's on DVD. But if it is, check your local library. And if they don't have it, demand it. So after finishing Andor Season 2, and then spoilers for Andor and Rogue One. I wasn't sure how spoilery I was going to get, but it's like I can't really talk about these without the big major plot point and the purpose of them. So, but after we finished Andor Season 2, I was like, we have to go back and rewatch Rogue One because that is my favorite fucking Star Wars movies outside of any of the trilogies. I love a good downer ending. Everyone fucking dies, and it is fantastic. It is one of my favorite things. They die so heroically, though, for just cause. So with Rogue One, the IMDb synopsis is, in a time of conflict, a group of unlikely heroes band together on a mission to steal the plans to the Death Star, the Empire's ultimate weapon of destruction. And my synopsis is simply the best Star Wars movie ever. The movie was written by Chris Wetz, Tony Gilroy, and John Knoll, and directed by Gareth Edwards. And it stars Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Alan Tudyk, Donnie Yen, Wen Chang, Ben Mendelsohn, Forrest Whitaker, Mads Mikkelsen, Riz Ahmed, Genevieve O'Reilly, and many, many more. Rogue One is available on Disney+. You can rent or buy on other streamers, but more importantly, this one is free at your local library. All right. Now we got that out of the way. So we and me, my husband and I and myself, we really enjoyed Andor, the 2 seasons. I love that it was a short series. It was only the 2 seasons. Season 2 ends and it leads right into Rogue One, which is awesome. Love that. But I love that I do kind of have a soft spot for the limited series in this world of short seasons and 3 years between seasons. I'm settling for being okay with limited series. This one I thought was more or less perfect. I love the setup. I love seeing how kind of the rebellion is forming from the start of like season 1 all the way to the end of season 2 and Cassian's role in it. It's just like it's I just think it's so very, very well done. It was kind of funny though, because when we decided to go ahead and start watching the second season of Andor, my husband and I were already kind of channel surfing or whatever and stopped on some news bullshit. And I was like, no current events. So then we turned on Andor and I looked at him and I was like, what did I say about current events? So everything going down in Andor with the Empire and the Gorams, or the one planet, it just asking for papers, the immigrations, the lying, the fucking senseless murdering of folks, rounding people up. Like, this was the show. I'm not talking about current events. Fucking wild that people today that are that supports Trump and all of this bullshit do not see that they are the fucking bad guys. It is unfucking real. Like, I dissociate like a motherfucker, but how disconnected do you have to fucking be to not get that you are on the bad guy side? Holy shit. This is why I told him no current events, because I get all fucking worked up. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very well done series. Again, the seasons are a little bit longer than some of the other ones I have yelled about, which is kind of nice because I feel like we get plenty of time with some of these characters and get a nice build up to the finale and everything. I will say with season 2, there's like the 1 or 2 episodes kind of in the beginning where Cassian, after he steals the Imperial flying machine. Oh my God. Words, descriptions. And he lands on a planet or whatever, kind of out in some like wooded area. But he's more or less like kidnapped, I guess, by these group of people that I guess were part of the rebellion, but they're kind of detached, or they've been left on this planet by dude's brother or some shit. I don't know. But then that group kind of separates and they're fighting amongst themselves more or less. And they're trying to get off the planet. So they're trying to steal the X-Wing that Cassian stole. And, but the way they have divided themselves, the ones that are hunkering down on the ship with Cassian don't have a pilot of their own. They have a pilot, but their pilot has taken sides with the other half. I don't know. And they're hunkering down in their old ship. And they're shooting at each other. And I don't really understand what the purpose of that was. Maybe other than to show that there are more people fighting the good fight, no matter how dingy they might be. Because these two groups felt very Hatfield and McCoys. They just kind of seemed a little dumb, fighting amongst themselves over stupid shit. I don't know. That's really kind of like not my only complaint, but that was like my first complaint. My second complaint is just with the character Bix and what they put her through for the first 2 seasons, or for these 2 seasons. In season 1, she was kidnapped, tortured, and then ultimately rescued. And Bix is Cassian's wife. And in season 2, like she's been saved. She's hiding out with some other rebels, and then the Empire lands, and this is where they're going through and looking for all the workers' papers and visas and shit like that. So she ends up being safe from that. She kills a couple of dudes. Don't worry, they're with the Empire, so it's fine. They deserved it because the one dude was going to try and rape her. Ooh, content warning for rape, I guess. The attempted rape. She beats his ass and ultimately ends up killing him. They end up being able to escape. Her and Cassian reunite, And then they're just kind of hiding out in a safe house set up by Luthen, played by Big Papa Skarsgård, who is kind of more or less the one behind everything, kind of pulling the strings, like more or less like the mastermind behind the rebellion in a sense. Definitely like the money guy. Right? Sort of. Or is that Mon? Either way, Cassian and Bix are holed up in a safe house. Season 2 goes through a couple of time jumps. So I think all in all, in season 2, a total of like 3 years passes. But during this time in their safe house, we see that Bix is got hella PTSD, nightmares about being tortured and imprisoned and all of that. She can't sleep. She, for a hot second, almost gets addicted to some sort of like sleeping aid, some sort of drug. So glad that didn't go any further. But it just felt like, again, we've got a female character and more or less kind of suffering to further the male protagonist's main character's storyline. Because otherwise, what all was the point, right? What I did like about Bix's storyline was that, Andor is, Cassian's very concerned about her and wants to try and help her and this and that. And then there's a shot where she's confronting her attacker, her kidnapper or whatever. And at first I was like, oh shit, is this like another dream? Are her nightmares shifting from nightmares to like, woohoo, I'm taking down my assailant? No, it turns out that her and Cassian straight up broke into that place. And so she could get her revenge and kill the dude. So I loved that for her. And I loved that we don't see the whole like kind of heist or whatever you want to call it of them breaking into the complex or whatever. And we just see Bix is in there and she gets her revenge and, kills the dude, leaves him for dead or whatever. And then kind of the next shot is her and Cassian just walking away from the place. I told my husband it'd been a lot cooler had it exploded because cool guys don't look at explosions. They just walk away. But I did really like that. And I like that we only saw Bix doing it. Obviously, Cassian was there as, support, an extra set of eyes, whatever role he may have played in breaking in. But it wasn't Cassian doing the saving or doing the revenging. So I did appreciate that. But all in all, Bix ends up leaving Cassian, because Cassian, he doesn't want to do the rebellion life. He wants to build a life with Bix, but it comes down to Bix believing so much in the cause that she does not want to be a distraction for Cassian. If Cassian decides to leave the rebellion, she wants him to decide that all on his own and not use her as the reason or excuse, blah, blah, blah. And then we kind of cut towards the end of the season, and Cassian's getting ready to fly off to do his Rogue One-ing, and we see Bix on a planet, and she's got a bebe. And they're looking up into the sky and everything, and she's thinking of Cassian, and it's like, oh, now we know another reason, maybe more of the reason why she left, because she maybe didn't want to raise the child. She just didn't want to be any kind of distraction for Cassian, because of such a huge role that Cassian played and will play in the rebellion. Not that she knew that or anything, but not that she had foresight or a premonition on any of that, but she knew that he would be vital to the cause. So I get it, but again, like I was saying, woman sacrifices everything for the man. But I guess she ultimately in the end lives. And the baby lives. And who knows, maybe baby Cassian will show up in a later something of Star Wars. Who fucking knows? So that could be really interesting. And then, we watched Rogue One after that because, like I said, I love a movie with a downer ending. I think Rogue One is a fantastic movie. I love that there are little to no Jedis. Other than Darth Vader at the end, near the end, and the one blind fella who is very, very strong, one with the Force, but is not a Jedi, officially. So you have all these people, all these rebels working towards the cause. None of them are Jedi. You know, this is all pre-Luke and Han and Old Ben and everything. So I just really liked that. These are just some average folks that believe so wholly in a cause that they are ready, willing-ish, but overall accepting of the fact that they could very well lose their life, but for the greater good. And Hot Fuzz has ruined that line for me forever. But that's one of the main things that I really, really liked about Rogue One. The big main thing was the fact that everyone fucking dies. I love that. And even though Andor focuses on Cassian and how he basically got into Rogue One, the movie is centered around Jane because her father, played by Mads Mikkelsen, he's an imperial scientist who ultimately is the one that built the Death Star. But he wasn't Empire at the heart. He was a rebellion at heart. But he agreed to finish building it, so that way, because he's like, well, someone's gonna build it. It might as well be me, and at least this way he can build in a failsafe. Like this tiny little thing that if you shoot it just right, blow it up, it'll destroy the entire Death Star. So it's kind of cool that we find out that that's how that failsafe got put into place on the Death Star in A New Hope. But yeah, so it centers around Jane and more or less trying to find/rescue her father. And then that turns into getting the plans for the Death Star. And that turns into trying to get those to Leia. And then that turns into a really bad CGI Princess Leia. Hate it. Fucking hate that. It's just so fucking gross. We did not need, I just don't think we could have just heard her voice. I don't care. Seeing it was not great. But yeah, that's kind of like a really big broad stroke overview of the series and the movie. And again, just really liked it. Really enjoyed them both. I had told my husband, since we had finished Andor, we really needed to rewatch Rogue One because since we finished Andor, we should really finish Andor. You know what I'm saying? But it was kind of fun watching season 2 and definitely towards that last half of the season. And we're introduced to Forrest Whitaker's character. They start name dropping Jane's dad's name in the finale, towards the end of season 2. Obviously we figure out that what the Empire has been planning, everything that they orchestrated in season 1 and season 2 was all a lie. They all lied about it because their ultimate goal was building the Death Star. So the rebels find that out, and as they're slowly learning it, my husband and I are like, ooh, it's the Death Star. And it was just kind of fun to get all these little, I wouldn't even fucking call them Easter eggs because they aren't, or are they? I don't know. But all these little name drops, mentions, hints to Rogue One. My husband was just he's like, oh, it's just connecting the dots. And then he sang the Connect the Dot song from Pee-wee's Playhouse. And that made me giggle. But yeah, if you haven't watched Andor and you like Star Wars and you just got all the spoilers here, well, thanks for listening. I appreciate that. But definitely go check out Andor. It's just, I love that story. And I think because it's the precursor to Rogue One, which is my favorite Star Wars movie, could be just the other reason why I love the series so much. All right, I went on a little long about that one, so I'm going to try and keep these next 2 short. All right, up next is Final Destination Bloodlines. So I finally got around to watching this the other night. My general feelings on it was that it was all right. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't love it. It's never going to top the first one. But it has kind of broken, for me, the curse of the even numbered Final Destination movies. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you should go check out the episode where me and Aaron from It's a Fandom Thing discuss the first 5 Final Destination movies. that was some pod prep. Holy shit. All right, so for Final Destination Bloodlines, IMDb synopsis. Plagued by a reoccurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. I didn't have a synopsis for this one, but I mean, it's a Final Destination movie. It's written and directed by Zach Lipovsky. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Hopefully I fucking spelled it right. That does... Hopefully. Let's see. And also Adam B. Stein. It stars Caitlin Santa Juana, Tio Briones, Tony Todd, Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Lore, and many more. It is available on HBO, other streamers, and your local library. Overall, like I said, I liked it. I thought some of the deaths were really fun. I thought some of the funny bits were pretty funny, made me laugh, made me chuckle, sensible chuckle. I don't think I was laughing at all the parts that were supposed to be funny, but it was, I mean, like I said, it's a fucking Final Destination movie. It's more or less about these elaborate deaths, these chain reaction deaths. And they were pretty decent. While I was somewhat interested in the overall plot of it being like a family curse, more or less, I didn't care a whole hell of a lot. The main characters were fine. I did like that it was a family and not just like a group of friends or a group of randos at a fucking NASCAR race or some shit. So those were the things that I did like. Oh, and I absolutely loved Tony Todd's popping up in this, just fucking tugging at the heartstrings. Was not expecting to ugly cry during this movie. Ugly laugh, sure. Ugly cry, not so much. But I love that he was able, I love and I'm grateful that he was able to film his scenes. And from what I was reading in the IMDb trivia, they more or less let him kind of ad lib, especially that last part as he's leaving the mortuary, or, you know, he's got his box, he's walking away from the kids and he's like, you know, live your life. You don't know how much is left, all of that kind of stuff. That was Tony's kind of personal message to the fans, and I absolutely loved it. So him popping up is definitely like my favorite part. And then just kind of his character's role and how his character played into everything. So in the opening, we see, you know, basically the main character's like dream. She's seeing her not her great grandma, but her grandma, and seeing what could have been with her grandma dying. And in all of that, there is a little boy that is saved because his mom puts him in some sort of box. Either way, this little kid is saved. And as we work through the movie, it is revealed that Tony Todd's character was that little boy. And so in the order of deaths, he's the like second to last one, because grandma already died, or he is the last one out of the original survivors. Either way, I liked how he was connected to everything. And kind of explained how he knew so much about death and not fucking, how you shouldn't be fucking with death's plan, because then shit gets messy. So I did really like that as well. But again, the overall storyline with the bloodlines and everything was fine. I did like that it all starts with the grandma, and that basically originally grandma saves everyone. She followed, just like in the first one, Devon Sawa saves everyone. Well, not everyone, but saves a handful of people, classmates, from the airplane exploding. In this one, we find out that grandma saved everyone that was up in like that Skyview restaurant or some shit. But then how Death was like, oh, hell no, bitch. And then proceeded to track down all the survivors and all of their family, because their family should not have existed. So I did really kind of like that. I thought that was a lot of fun. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to tie all the movies together and tie all these victims together. Not that it was like absolutely necessary, but I did like that for the most part. I guess it was overall like the characters, their family, bullshit and whatnot. That was just kind of like, it's all right. It could have been any fucking family. It really didn't matter. But so I guess I liked the concept of Bloodlines and tying everything together. Seeing it all play out on screen was fine, but I wasn't like overwhelmed by it. And that's okay, because I still enjoyed this movie. I still had a lot of fun with it. I don't think it's going to change the order of my favorite Final Destination movies. I'd actually have to go back and double check where I ranked them, because I don't remember. Oh, I will say that in that opening death scene or whatever, I did like that it started with some asshole kid taking a penny out of a fountain, taking someone's wish. These are people's wishes. Can't take people's wishes. But yeah, so some asshole kid takes the penny. He tries to drop it from the top of the thing. It doesn't make it all the way down, and that's what starts the chain reaction and what causes the sky view thing or whatever it's called to come crashing down, killing everyone in what should have been, but then that the penny bounces and rolls its way back into the fountain. I thought that was hilarious. So the main character, she starts having the nightmares, the visions of her grandma's death, like 2 months prior. And she comes back home from college. Her family is just kind of like, well, don't go talking to grandma whatever about it. So she goes and talks to grandma whatever about it. Grandma's holed up in a cabin, completely safe, completely like death proof, as long as she doesn't leave. And in their kind of short conversation, the main character mentions that, these dreams started about 2 months ago. We find out that grandma was diagnosed with cancer around 2 months prior. So those two things are happening around the same time. My assumption, since it's never really addressed again, is obviously once grandma's cancer is diagnosed, one that's death coming to get her eventually, since it can't get her violently and in a fun Rube Goldberg kind of way. So they're just going to get her with fucking cancer. Boring. But grandma's safe as long as she doesn't leave the cabin. And what happens? Grandma ends up leaving the cabin. She dies right in front of the granddaughter to kind of prove more or less everything is real. Gives her the big book of Final Destinations and everyone's premonitions and their deaths and all of that, and to know to look for the signs. So she passes it on. It was passed on to the granddaughter even before the book and everything, and the full knowledge was passed on. But, then she goes and tries to tell her family. Her family's like, whatever, don't listen to Grandma Cuckoo Pants. But then their uncle dies in death by lawnmower. Utterly ridiculous. And so then, they're realizing that death is coming for them in order of when they were born. We find out that one of the oldest sons, because it's all, again, family, so it's one of her cousins, he ends up being spared from death. He's the one that's got all the piercings and works in the tattoo shop and whatnot. And he doesn't die because he is not actually part of that bloodline. He is an illegitimate son. Kind of saw that coming. Still made it kind of funny. But since the bastard son tried to save like the son's son and got in death's way, the bastard son fucking ate it. And that was really funny because, he's got the piercings. There's the MRI machine. It's finding out where all his piercings were. Hilarious. Again, just pure comedy gold. But I also liked, and I will have to go back and rewatch the previous movies because I don't really recall this being like, I don't really recall these kind of standing out. But in Bloodlines, because the death of everyone in the big Skyview thing more or less starts with the glass window dance floor shattering, spidering out, and breaking, that all the people's deaths in this movie, all the family members, maybe except for grandma. No, I think there still was. But it's there's always like a bit of like broken glass, or it's the shattering glass or broken glass is a catalyst for these chain reactions of death. So like with the uncle, there was a piece of broken glass that got into the ice thing at the family barbecue, which then got into a glass, which then got spilled and just spilled into the grass. Did I say glass? The broken glass was in a drink glass, which fell in the grass. Either way, then eventually someone steps on it, and then chain reaction of murder. And then the next thing you know, the uncle's kissing the lawnmower. And I want to say, yes, every death throughout the movie was preceded with some broken glass or glass shattering. So I thought that was kind of neat. And like I said, I don't recall that being in the previous movies. I suppose with the first one, you could argue that Devon Sawa's character sees like the thing, like paper flying or like the airplanes, like these are the signs that he's picking up on. So possibly, like I said, I'll have to rewatch them to find out, to see if that was consistent through the franchise. But yeah, it was fine. And the ending, I mean, yes, everyone fucking dies because it's a Final Destination movie. So woohoo, the downer endings. Or is that a happy ending? Because everyone dies and that's what's supposed to happen. And that's what's expected. And so you're like, wee. Or is it a downer ending because everyone dies and that's so sad? No, it's definitely not that. So, yeah, Bloodlines. I think I'm going to give Bloodlines like somewhere in the 6s. I don't know if I'd go as high as like a 6.8. I don't know that I'd go as low as like a 6.3. I might go as low as a 6.3. So it's somewhere in that middle. It was fine. I'll rewatch it. Kind of getting excited because as our oldest is getting older and showing more interest in horror movies, I've been keeping a small list of some of the ones that he and I can watch together. So maybe all of the Final Destination movies are going to be on that list. Again, very American. So violence, death, blood, gore, murder, all that stuff. I'm fine with showing my children when they are of age and they're ready for it. But anything sexual or with boobies or anything like that, no thanks. Mommy's not doing that. I do have standards as a parent, so. All right. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is one that I just kind of happened to watch last night. I knew very, very little about this movie other than it's just a horror comedy. I feel like some people either really enjoyed this movie or really just did not. I can kind of understand it going either way. But while I wasn't officially planning to cover this movie, I was like, well, maybe I'll just take some notes on the off chance that I happen to cover it. Because I wasn't going to talk about this movie today. I was going to talk about a different movie that I was planning on watching last night. But then I decided to watch The Monkey. So, IMDb synopsis. When twin brothers Bill and Hal find their father's old monkey toy in the attic, don't call it a toy, a series of gruesome deaths start. The siblings decide to throw the toy away and move on with their lives, growing apart over the years. What I says about this, I says it's kind of like Final Destination, but with like Slaughterhouse vibes. So it's like kind of goofier, right? Like just a kind of a goofier horror movie. It's a horror comedy, so you're going to expect some ridiculousness, some goofiness in it. Love it, hate it, whatevs. All right, so this movie was written and directed by Osgood Perkins. It's based on the short story by Stephen King, and it stars Theo James, Tatiana Maslany, Christian Convey, Colin O'Brien, and Adam Scott. It's available on Hulu, Disney, Rent Buy, and free at your local library. So as I'm watching this movie, as it's getting started, I always watch with the closed captions on, and I have to say the captions were very specific regarding the movie, what language it was being sung in, what language the lyrics were in, and versus like the style of music. I think it was like some Indian and Italian influences. I like that rather than just foreign music playing. And then, of course, Adam Scott shows up and he's trying to like get rid of this fucking organ grinder monkey thing, drummer toy thing. But he's unable to. And once the monkey hit that drum and it summons death, the way all of that played out, the shop owner's death, the flamethrower, the melting monkey face, like my first three notes are: one, the captions are very specific regarding the music. Nice. Second one was Adam Scott. And the third note is, oh, this is ridiculous. So there's just something about, I don't even recall exactly, but it was the way he delivered a line, or it was like his body language. Maybe it was during the flame throwing, where I was like, oh, this is just some fucking goofy ass shit. So I was like, all right, I'm a little more prepared for that. So, and then there's one scene where the monkey, it's like the young boys are with their babysitter, Annie Wilkes, nice. They leave the monkey toy in the car, and then it somehow magically ends up in the front seat. And that's where I was like, this kind of reminds me of Slaughterhouse. And then Annie dies. That was a nice clean cut. But then she's decapitated and her head falls on the hibachi thing. It's fucking terrible. But what's worse was the funeral. Worst funeral ever, or funniest funeral ever. The priest guy, he's just like, oh, whatever, shit happens, we die. Meh. And then the mom to the boys just being like, we all die, you're gonna die, he's gonna die, I'm gonna die, it's inevitable. Which, not wrong, but goddamn. But we find out that, the monkey is evil, and you turn the key, and once it starts drumming, once it hits the drum that one last time, again, death is summoned. And it kills somebody. It doesn't necessarily kill who you want it to kill as the key turner. It's just going to kill some random motherfucker. And what happens is that Hal, because Bill's the asshole brother. Hal is not the asshole brother. But as a child, he turned the key and his mom died. Their mom died. And their mom died in front of Bill. And so that really fucked him up. And then from there, they go to live with their Aunt Ida and Uncle Chip, who we don't get a lot of time with them, but Uncle Chip was hilarious. And I believe that was Osgood Perkins. And then Aunt Ida was played by Sarah Levy, who was on Schitt's Creek. She was Twyla on Schitt's Creek. So they were kind of a hoot. Uncle Chip definitely was, when he was talking to Bill or whichever one, about how they never wanted to be parents because when they sit down, they like to sit until they want to stand up again. Which, I'm sorry, but fucking respect. They're also swingers, and they're going to do their very best, which will be very bad. Hilarious. And then the boys are talking, and Bill doesn't want to change out of his funeral suit because as soon as he does, he's just going to have to attend another funeral. So he's thinking if he never takes it off, then he doesn't have to put it back on for another funeral. But during this conversation, the Hal says something to Bill, don't Bill, or don't be ridiculous, because it's cut off and it goes right to a funeral. I believe it was Uncle Chip's funeral. I laughed and laughed and laughed. I thought that was fucking hysterical. And And then we do a bit of a time jump. We're in present day. The boys at this point had gotten rid of the monkey, dropped it in a well, hoping to be safe, but they were kind of assuming that at some point it would be back. And at some point it came back. And it goes after Aunt Ida. This was fucking wild. So basically, Aunt Ida falls through some steps and she gets a bunch of fishing hooks in her face. And then as she's pulling them out, she, for whatever reason, decides to use rubbing alcohol on her face, which would hurt like a motherfucker. And then decides to go over and check the stove because maybe she's smelling gas or something. That's kind of what it seems like. And then she gets her face all up into the stove, and then that lights on fire, which then sets her head on fire, and she becomes Ghost Rider. My other favorite thing about Aunt Ida's death is when Hal and his son go to the house to meet the realtor and to try and see if the monkey toy is there. You can see on the ceiling the scorch marks from where Aunt Ida was running around. That tickled me. But yeah, so Hal has a son that that he only sees once a year in an attempt to keep him safe because Hal figures he's cursed. This monkey curse can come back at any time, and he doesn't want to put him at risk. Hal and Bill as adults are estranged and just have gone their separate ways. We find out that Bill gets kind of sucked into this obsession with the monkey toy, that he was the one that went down into the well and retrieved it, and is basically more or less like its follower, its worshiper and whatnot. And when he goes down there, though, right, the monkey isn't there, but just the key. So the monkey had already disappeared, I believe. But Bill knew that someday they would be reunited, and then someday they were. And so Bill continues to turn the key because he realizes that Hal was the one that, quote, killed Bill's mom, because he keeps saying my mom, and all of this. And so that all comes to a confrontation. Bill and Hal come face to face. Hal realizes Bill has the monkey, this and that. Bill wants Hal's son Petey to turn the key because the person who turns the key doesn't die. And Bill's really hoping that if Petey turns the key, then Hal's going to die. So all of that transpires. Petey turns the key and nothing happens initially. Oh, and even before that, Bill super duper turns the key and basically more or less starts like the end of the world, at least for this township. Because we see outside, shit's blowing up and burning and this and that. So the monkey kind of just does what it wants. Because, Bill got all mad at it and was yelling at it and, threw it and whatnot. And then the monkey started drumming all super fast and crazy like. And then Bill's like, what did I do wrong? Bitch, you yelled at it. The fuck you mean, what'd you do wrong? You know that this thing is dangerous. You fucking worship it. And then you're going to yell at it and whatever because it's not killing your brother. And then you're going to be like, what did I do wrong? Why do you hate me? Dude, grow the fuck up. Sorry, a little mini tangent. So, yeah, so Petey turns the key. Nothing really happens at first because the monkey's arm doesn't drop on the drum that one last time. Hal tries to make amends with Bill. They both kind of realize, Bill finally realizes that Hal also lost his mom. And he's like, I didn't think about it like that. We are brothers. You're fucking twins. Holy shit. And Bill repurposing his childhood funeral suit mixed with that flame shirt that was really big in the late 90s. That was a look. That was a choice. Hilarious. The flame part looked very much like a cummerbund or a corset. I don't know, but very stylish. So it seems like Bill and Hal are going to be on the mends. They're going to repair their friendship, their brotherhood. They're going to rebuild, maybe try to be a bit of a family, but nope. Monkey's got other plans, and Monkey basically unleashes the bowling ball, their mom's bowling ball, to take off Bill's head and kill him, which was what Hal always fantasized about. had always kind of wished, because his brother was such a dick. Bill was such an asshole. But I'm sure Bill had his reasons, not that it excuses it, but it sounds like their childhood was maybe not super great with their dad just, leaving. So he probably had a lot of unresolved emotional trauma from all of that, and psychological, most likely. So that got me thinking that this movie is really about generational trauma being passed down from father to son. Specifically, we'll go with specifically male generational trauma. But Hal runs from it, right? Like, he is so afraid that the monkey toy is going to kill his kid, that he runs from his family. He pushes them away in that attempt to keep them safe, but not actually addressing anything. And all it really does is furthers the trauma and grief. And it still is passed down to his kid. Maybe not directly, like with the monkey or anything, but Hal's actions have definitely had an impact on Petey. You kind of get the sense that, because Petey's about to be adopted by his stepdad, who's played by Elijah Wood, some weird Jesus guru cult person guy. I don't know. Hilarious. I did not know he was in it. So when he popped up and was being a weirdo, I was like, fucking what? Love it. But he's about to adopt Petey. And then that way Hal doesn't even have to worry about showing up once a year for him and this and that. First of all, is it different state to state? Wouldn't Hal need to sign away his parental rights in order for another person to adopt his son or somehow agree to it? Because I'm like, I don't think you can just do that. I don't think you can just adopt someone's kid. But we get the sense that Petey doesn't necessarily want that. He wants to try and build a relationship with his father. He does call him Hal. Totally understandable. They see each other once a year. At one point, he does say, like, my dad, or he calls Hal dad, or refers to him as his dad or something, which was so sweet. But you can just kind of see that Petey's reacting the way a teenage kid would react. A little bit withdrawn, very sarcastic, kind of getting in his digs, a little passive aggressive, like, oh, you don't have to worry about me coming around anymore, something like that. Or, in a couple of days, I won't even be your son anymore. That kind of stuff, kind of more or less guilting Hal into spending more time with him in a way, right? So then that's how the generational trauma on Hal's side is affected. With Bill, because he stayed reclused, he more or less lives in the trauma. He's just obsessed with it. And he tries to control the pain in very unhealthy ways. There was one line about pure, like 100% pure, uncut something. Doesn't name a drug specifically, but gives you the impression that he becomes addicted to drugs, like hard drugs, like really bad drugs. So that's how Bill is trying to control and deal with the pain and the grief and the obsession of this monkey and the obsession of revenge. And again, grieving his mom, their mom, but doesn't try to live outside of the trauma, doesn't try to address those issues in any kind of healthy or productive way. At least with Hal, you can almost say that he tried to break the cycle by trying to stay away. That's not necessarily a good way to do it or an effective way, but when people are kind of at a loss at what to do, I feel like that's one of the first things that's going to come to mind is I just have to get away from these people. I have to stay as far away from them as possible. But we see that doesn't work, right? Like he wasn't able to maintain no contact with his brother Bill. as much as he wanted to save Petey from it, he still could not give him up completely, because otherwise, why are you still doing once a year visits? Right? Because he still loves his kid and he still wants to be a part of his kid's life. He wants to try and have some sort of relationship with his kid. He just doesn't know how to do it in a safe and healthy manner. Not being honest with him, the lying, obviously not great. He lied to Petey about even having a brother. He's not being honest about the toy monkey with Petey. And to be fair, how could you be honest? Like, that's one of those moments where in a movie someone actually says, what the fuck is going on? And the person they're talking to is like, that's impossible. That's crazy. There's no way that can happen. And then bam, they die or something. So I can understand not coming clean about the monkey, because you only have once a year, like what, like a week or two tops. Why are you going to bring that up and make shit weird? I get it. But I liked that. I just got to say, I kind of like that. I like that this movie addresses grief, trauma, family issues, and all of that in one of the goofiest ways I've ever seen. Because people didn't just die, they fucking exploded. The woman in the electrified pool, just pink mist. Who else exploded? There's a lot of explosions. People exploding. The mom, did she explode? No, she just had an I don't really remember. But either way, it's gory, but like in a fun way. In a very like super ridiculous, totally impossible kind of way. Oh man. So all in all, I'd have to say, oh, and then like the movie ends again. So Bill dies and Hal and Petey go driving off into the sunset or something. And Hal remembers a moment with his mom and his brother after a funeral of just dancing. Like, I feel like dancing. And it definitely seemed like one of the happier moments of Hal's childhood. I think he even says that despite that day being a funeral, it was the happiest day of his life, because everything kind of goes to shit after that. So Hal is bringing in some of the happier, familiar family traditions versus the trauma and the grief and the not handling it. Tells Petey that's what your grandma would do, something, blah, blah, blah. And they drive off and you're like, all right, they're going to be okay. Because they were at a stoplight, light turns green, they drive away. But then before the movie is over, we have a school bus coming in from the right, going down the street, who, might I add, is running a red light. But it's a school bus. There's like cheerleaders, like hooting and hollering outside the window and everything. And then at the same time, a semi also running a red light, drives past them and like kills all the kids hanging out the window. Hysterical. Oh, I'm all over the place with this one. I apologize. But after Hal and Petey leave, after Ben is killed and everything, and they're driving back into the town, we see all the death and destruction from when Bill turned the key all psychotically. Just the woman that ran by with the stroller on fire. What the fuck? That's not something I should laugh at. But I did, because it was funny. It was silly. All right. So that was my take on the movie The Monkey. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think I would give this like a good 6.8. So I think on IMDb, I gave it a 7 since I can't do partial star ratings. And yeah, I enjoyed it. So, all right. Well, that has been what's been streaming in my bubble lately. Let me know what's been streaming in your bubble. Anything that you've been watching, or if you don't really watch much, like what games have you what games have you been playing? What books have you been reading? Just what you've been up to. Let me know in the comments. Or you can send me an email at mystreamingbubble@gmail.com. Oh, shit. One last thing about the monkey. So according to IMDb, the only person on whom the monkey inflicts a, quote, natural death is Lois, the mom, who dies of a brain aneurysm. Every other victim dies in some sort of accident or otherwise violent manner. So when I saw that, it kind of made me wonder, like, the power of coincidence and maybe giving strength to something that's super random and just ill-timed and kind of making it a thing. So in a way, did Bill and Hal accidentally give the monkey power? Because they believed that when you turn the key, the arm fell and someone died. Although, obviously, we see in the beginning that that's not the case. Unless it was the father as well. The father believed it and made it real. Because we see in like a flashback when Bill and Hal are talking, we see the mom and she says, you know, it's her time or something to Bill before she dies. And she just kind of drops. Whereas when we see her death at the closer to the beginning of the movie, she like explodes or something, I think. It was a lot bloodier. Maybe she was bleeding from like her face or eyes or something. You know, and that's kind of like Hal's thing, right? Is everyone dies, you know, kind of holding on to that life lesson of their mom that everyone dies. We all die. It's going to be sometime at some point. Coincidences, randomness, and all that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily have a factor in when or how a person dies, but it just kind of made me wonder. I'm like, okay, so she didn't die in some weird, elaborate way. She died of a natural, quote, natural death. And was it just ill-timed with Hal turning the key, wishing for his brother's death? And then his guilt and all of that. But yeah, it just, like I said, when I saw that in IMDb, I was like, I wonder. All right, now I'm done. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's minisode. Let me know what you thought of let me know what you thought of Andor, what you think of Rogue One, and why it's the best Star Wars movie. Let me know what you thought of Final Destination Bloodlines, and let me know what you thought of The Monkey, and just what a fucking ride these movies were, huh? Man, I just realized today's theme is everyone dies. Not Hal and Petey, but literally everyone else fucking dies. That was totally by accident. It's just what I happen to be watching. Oh, gee, I wonder why I am subconsciously obsessed or drawn to movies where everyone dies. Everyone just gets put out of their fucking misery. And they don't have to live in their fucked up world and their fucked up timelines. Anyway, whew. Where was I? I was closing out. The one thing I'm still like really bad at. So, but yes, thank you all for listening. Make sure you're following the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Also on the YouTubes. And then you can also do all of those things for the monthly podcast that I co-host with Aaron from It's a Fandom Thing, where we test our twinningness. And that one's called Twin It to Win It, because I don't think I actually said that yet. But you can find us on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And obviously rate, review, share, follow, all that stuff on a podcast player near you. So one last reminder, after today, gonna take a short break, but I will be back. So until then, Bubblies, thank you all so much for listening and keep streaming. Goodbye. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to let me know by rating and reviewing on a podcast player near you, and by sharing your favorite episodes with your friends, family, and mail carrier. Then be sure to follow me on all your favorite socials like Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Just search My Streaming Bubble and I should pop on up there for ya. If you have suggestions on what I should stream in my bubble next, or you want to be tolerated, send an email to mystreamingbubble@gmail.com. Looking for merch? Stop by my Redbubble store where you can find and buy My Streaming Bubble stickers, hats, shirts, and more. You can also head over to buymeacoffee.com and, well, buy me a coffee. Need more Podcast Me in your life? Then be sure to check out my other podcast, Twin It to Win It. That's a monthly podcast that I co-host with my podcast brain twin, Erin from It's a Fandom Thing, where we test our twinningness by trying to guess if we both feel the same way about different horror movies. You can find and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And most importantly, you can listen, rate, review, and share from most podcast players. Thank you for your support, and keep streaming. Goodbye.